friends, I'm here today to break down Karungaapiyam, a Tamil horror thriller film that debuted on Prime Video and is also known as a dark novel in English. The narrative revolves around a book that is profoundly cursed. Several subplots intersect with the main plot. You would love watching it since Kajal Aggarwal is one of the primary stars. Tell me in the comments area where you're from. I'm curious to know how many people view my films from the south side. Actually, if you're interested in watching videos from all throughout India or perhaps the world, please let me know your location in the comment box. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so you can be the first to know when I upload new videos. Based on the 6, 2 stars out of 10, therefore without further ado, let's watch the video. A girl named Karthika is introduced at the start of the film. She is on her way to meet a friend. Priya immediately inquires about Karthika's current emotional state upon her arrival. Karthika just went through a breakup, which was a really difficult time for her. Plus, they were unable to leave the home very much due to the pandemic. Priya now suggests to Karthika that she should just ignore everything. In any case, she claims to enjoy reading novels. Additionally, an old library has just been purchased by Priya's brother. There he perused antiquarian literature. Soon after, Karthika is beaming with joy, and we rejoin her at the library. Suddenly, Anand, Priya's brother, appears from behind and informs her that the library is 100 years old. Now that Karthika has decided to read fiction, she heads to the library to locate a book that piques her interest. Karungaapiyam, also known as a black novel, is a large fictional storybook that contains numerous terrifying tales. The book appears to be outdated, but Karthika decides to read it anyway. At the beginning of the book it states, "I dedicate this book to those mysteries which lie in this magical world." Karthika starts reading the book and finds the first story, The Woman with a Black Tongue, as per his order. The narrative opens with Meera, a young girl, sobbing on the stairs. Later on, a young man called Shakti, who had lived in the building before, walks by. When Shakti inquires, Meera reveals that he had reserved a room in this building. Unfortunately, her landlord turned her down when she showed up today to stay. Indeed, she had also expressed disappointment when she asked her friend whether she might spend a few days at her residence. After Meera's mood plummets after hearing this, Shakti reassures her that he lives alone and offers her shelter till the epidemic passes if she so desires. At that point, she starts to smile and agrees with Shakti. This scenario ends here as Meera packs up all her belongings and heads to Shakti's place. When we meet Meera the following morning, she has only just woken up and she is on her way to see Shakti, in which he informs her that the building's owner of flat B13 has passed away. Plus, his wife was the one who killed him. His story continues by describing a domestic dispute in which the wife's wrath led her to smash her husband's skull with a rolling pin, causing it to split in two. The news hits Meera like a ton of bricks. The owner of B13 flat was her landlord, and he turned down her offer of a house tomorrow. And just like today, Meera swore angrily on the way that she would die and that he would have his skull slashed in half. When she asks Shakti about it, he begins to giggle and claims it's all a coincidence. Meera, though, was quite certain, so they decided to give it a try. When a delivery boy finally arrives at their residence, he couldn't help but curse Meera. They will then determine the efficacy of Meera's curse, but the delivery lad hands over the package without incident and then departs. Meera explains to Shakti that he refrained from cursing her because she had mercy on him. Shakti finds this amusing and assumes Meera is joking. Regardless, Meera tries to leave the house the following day while she is home alone. The main door, however, is locked from the outside, as she discovers, unlikely to have been Shakti's choice. Upon his return, Meera inquires as to the reason for his decision to lock the front door. This is when Shakti assures him it won't happen again, saying that he must have accidentally locked it. During the wee hours of the morning, Meera is startled awake by some peculiar sounds. Additionally, she witnesses Shakti bringing a man's corpse to her room as she gazes out the window. Meera is filled with terror as she witnesses this. When Shakti isn't home the following day, Meera sneaks into his room and discovers the bodies of 2 individuals, which gives her the creeps. He took a heavy blow from Shakti at this point. Shakti is a serial psychopath, Meera learns. Meera pretends she is unaware of the significance of those corpses, and Shakti appears at that moment. Meera attempts to flee whenever she has the chance because she wants to leave this house as fast as possible. However, Shakti swiftly apprehends her, severely assaults her, and subsequently binds her to a chair. Shakti had transformed into his serial killer persona and was viciously slashing the bodies in Meera's presence. Shakti returns to the hall and after a brief period sees the same living corpse he had murdered while he is repositioning a chair. In the midst of his terror, Shakti receives a video call from a friend, whom he confides in about Mira. In fact, Mira passed away 5 years ago, as his friend discovers when he looks up her Facebook ID. It follows that he is not a living being but rather a spirit. With this newfound knowledge, this serial killer is understandably terrified, according to Shakti. In other words, this was the first time he had ever felt terror. After that, a ghost strikes him, sending Shakti tumbling to the ground in terror. Next, we find Shakti, with whom the scene concludes with Mira's spirit behind her. Mira, having killed Shakti, now searches for her next victim as she carries her bags up the stairs to this soul, where she cries again after a brief smile. This concludes the first story. After finishing the first story, Kartika tries to phone Priya to chat to her, but Priya is engrossed in a conversation, so Kartika ends the call and moves on to the second story. A young youngster is now depicted pounding on a door. A young woman named Kajal then emerges from the home. Not only that, but Kajal is a well-known fitness influencer, makeup artist who uploads videos to YouTube. Plus, he's been pressing Kajal to film a video with him, and she finally gave up and invites the youngster inside. We get a glimpse into Kajal's lifestyle, now that we know she worked throughout the pandemic to advise others on how to live healthier lives. She even used to stream live every single day. An unidentified man shows up at Kajal's residence one day while he is live streaming. In her fear, Kajal cuts off the stream and sets out to find the man. The moment that man approaches him, he immediately attacks Kajal. Surprisingly though, the man begins to flee from Kajal the very next second. Afterwards, Kajal takes an object and smashes it on the man's head before dragging him into a room, in which Kajal ensnared a great number of guys. We finally get it. Kajal is a total psycho. Quiet mind. One of his cannibalistic tendencies is his fondness of eating fingers. That is why the room was devoid of any sign of male presence. Simultaneously, we can observe the young YouTuber who visited Kajal that day to film a video, but who also abducted him. At that very moment, Kajal reaches out and starts nibbling on a man's fingers. Then though, someone shows up to visit Kajal. Another boy who is popular on YouTube was there when Kajal went to visit, which needed to be discussed with Kajal, and Kajal subsequently invites her inside. Here is where the narrative concludes. So it seemed inevitable that the lad would end up in the same boat. Our protagonist Kartika is portrayed reading the story and lost in thought at the end of it. However, she catches a glimpse of a spirit in the library's nook. She mulls over the possibility that Priya calls her beforehand, and Kartika fills her in on the details of the 2 tales she's read, and he assures her that the present Prime Minister and pandemic have covered a lot of ground in this book. Afterwards, Priya inquires about the author of the book, but Kartika is unable to read it because the name of the writer was removed. Priya proceeds to inform Kartika that she will inquire with her brother about the author of this book and give him a call. Following this, Kartika ends the call and proceeds to the 3rd tale. Famous music composer Siddharth Abhimanyu is appointed by 2 characters named Shruti and Jacob in this novel. Originally, Jacob wanted music for his film, and he cast Siddharth and Shruti, the singer and composer, to help him achieve his goal. Shruti begins to record her song after Siddharth brings them inside after a while. While Shruti was speaking, Siddharth had the impression that she was saying something nasty about him. Shruti becomes enraged when Siddharth repeatedly mentions this to Jacob. She then begins to visit the studio, even though she refrained from making such a statement. Meanwhile, someone had locked themselves out of the house from the outside, and the light in the studio went out. A mute guy, a Punjabi, a tea vendor, a kinner, and the soul of the same woman appear to them as strange events unfold. For this reason, Jacob and Shruti flee the scene. Following this, we see what happens the following night. Jacob's supervisor calls him. "Are you getting music composed by a drunk, dead man?" he says. Jacob is so confused by this that his supervisor orders him to turn on the television. Upon opening the news, he learns that Siddharth Abhimanyu passed away a few days ago as a result of a drunk driving accident. This is why he also ran over 5 pedestrians with his car. Jacob had seen the souls of these 5 individuals in the studio. Subsequently, Jacob begins to get calls and discovers that Siddharth is the caller. The door to Jacob's chamber shuts itself as he lacks the nerve to answer the call. By the same token, Kartika reads and completes the 3rd story. The conclusion. After reading about a woman holding a light in the narrative, Kartika discovers that she is in a library and encounters the same character. As soon as Kartika reaches her workstation, she sees Kajal's ghost there, which vanishes the very next second. This horrifies her greatly. After that, she finds out that the story's characters were true by researching them online. All the tales told therein, however, were accurate. The characters in question had long since passed away. Kartika continues to read the fourth narrative despite how terrifying everything is. Two friends who get drunk together make up the fourth narrative. Bamboo and Sarvana are the names of these two companions. They were both deprived of alcohol for quite some time because of the lockdown. After that, they visit a locked pub, but just staring at the beer bottles isn't enough to satisfy them. They are certain that they have located the hidden wealth. Now they're both in a mad dash to get a beer, but suddenly they both start experiencing some unusual side effects. An enormous wooden box or a ghost without a head may appear before them at random moments. Both of them are frightened by this creature, and suddenly out of nowhere, several odd people appear. Sarakalaya was the name of one of their leaders. Sarakalaya informs them that they are extraterrestrial beings and that the lockdown prevents them from escaping. She explains to COVID-19 that they are stranded here due to human error. She continues by saying that alcohol is a source of energy for their kind. They can't acquire booze here because of that, which is why they're here. Sarakalaya now advises them to pass a test because they both want booze so much. Now Savannah makes the first wish, but it doesn't come true. Instead, a woman named Veena appears. This surprises Savannah, who is taken aback by the turn of events. He then recalls his childhood promise to his sister to give Veena a gift, but she never delivered. In this moment, Pambu contacts his long-lost grandmother, whom his family had left in an old-age home. They were also unpopular with Pambu. After that, he expresses his apologies to his grandma, which makes Sarakalaya emotional as well. Because of this, they have come to terms with the fact that they have damaged their lives. You have both passed this test, Sarakalaya has informed them. Even so, Sarakalaya refrains from providing them with alcohol. Then the siren of the police cruiser may be heard. Then Sarakalaya and her folks set out. Afterwards, Kartika finds Sarakalaya and his followers here right after the story concludes. Their being here is all due to Sarakalaya, she goes on to tell Kartika. That is, it's not out of the question that reading the stories is bringing out the personalities. Afterwards, Kartika opts not to skip ahead. However, she reconsiders and picks up her book once more. At this point, she was siding with the last narrative. As the story opens, we find ourselves in a village where children are mysteriously going missing. Not only that, but someone was committing nighttime murders in the village. Someone murdered Kanna tonight, and that was all. At this point in the narrative, we observe Kartika, a mother, playing with her daughter Umal. In the meantime, Cassie, Kartika's brother-in-law, shows in to inform him that his brother is returning home on military leave. His joy quickly fades when he realizes that the entire community is fleeing. Upon his arrival, the sight of Kanda's lifeless body is witnessed by all. Concurrently, Cassie has summoned the village headman to look into the kidnappings and murders of youngsters. However, he irritates the headman, who tells him that he has not yet matured and should thus speak up among all this chaos. Because he has not yet matured, the village chief becomes enraged and tells him to stop talking in the midst of everything. As a celebration of her husband's arrival, Kartika extends an invitation to the entire hamlet. After that, the chief also shows up and uses both languages. Kartika informs the chief that she has prophesied future events and has documented them in a book. The chief now orders Kartika to divulge some information about this village because he does not believe this to be real. A vision of Kartika's bleak future appears to her when she shuts her eyes. For that reason, Kartika foretells to the chief that this town would one day serve as a cemetery. Now the chief injects some self-deprecating humor into the situation. In response, Kartika warns him not to touch the pots. Suddenly, the chief loses his grip on two pots, and they both smash to pieces. This greatly surprises the chief. What gave rise to this? Up until that point, his daughter Umal shows up and announces that Papa has arrived, at which point Kartika joyfully begins to leave the house. However, upon returning home, Kartika is shocked to learn that her husband was indeed dead, and that her own body had been transported there, who passed away the day prior to arriving at the border. In response, Kartika becomes extremely depressed and decides to live on her own. The servant of Kartika informs Pandi Sarpanch one night that he once saw Kartika dressed as a witch. Furthermore, she may be the one responsible for the village's ills. Thinking about this, the Sarpanch contacts a priest for advice. This sets the village abuzz with rumors that Kartika is an alcoholic. Not only that, his house is taken from him, and he is compelled to reside in a hut distant from the settlement. Kartika and her family were now residing there. The villagers begin murdering Kartika one by one. The following day, we see the villagers killing Karthika by dragging him to a tree and then throwing stones at him, and thus Karthika passes away. Here we see Pandey, Kashi, and Pandit having a drink together, and that's when we learn the hero's oath. At this point, he sees Karthika's soul for the first time. She is so terrified that she hides the book and returns to her house. At home, Karthika confides in Priya about everything that has happened, and they are both taken aback to learn that the author Omel Karthika was also the name of the woman and girl from the previous narrative. Even modern-day Karthika was once called Umayyad Karthika. According to Priya, Karthika's signature is also on the book's author's copy, so perhaps she will be Karthika's reincarnation as a storyteller. Additionally, the villager Karthika was aware that something was off with her from the start. She must have written this book before, and maybe that's why. I believe she is a medium who has seen souls, and it's possible that she is aware of her own impending rebirth. So, to put this to the test, Priya has Karthika write down her hunger pangs, and just then, a peculiar whistle from the stovetop starts rattling around the kitchen. Karthika writes that Santa Claus should come and murder her, but Priya brushes it off as a coincidence and has her write something different. Someone starts violently pounding on their door the second she writes this much, and they both die. Upon opening the door, they both realize that it is actually Anand who has come to abduct Priya, despite their initial fear that the killer is inside. Karthika confines Priya in her house while Anand goes on his adventure. Priya finds a slicker-wielding Santa Claus in the second chamber. Whoever reads this narrative and sees Karthika immediately goes to see her, since the two are identical 100 years old. Rebirth had taken place. Perhaps there was going to be an error with it today as well. To be continued then appears right in front of us, and, well, that wraps up the film. The plot of the Tamil horror flick Karungaapiyam is thus complete, my friends. That was my wish for you. Plus, for some reason, this picture brought to mind an international horror flick called Books of Blood. Also, I highly recommend that movie to anyone who hasn't seen it. Some commonalities will undoubtedly emerge. In addition, you'll find 5 stories that are both unique and fascinating. However, due to its inclusion in the primary plot, the last chapter piqued my curiosity. This is a crucial part of the story.